Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're gonna learn how to use joysticks and how to control servos using them. So let's get started. So, joysticks work similarly to adjustable resistors. They use potentiometers to detect movement along the X and Y axis. So both axes of the joystick has a potentiometer. When you move the joystick, the resistance in these potentiometers changes, altering the voltage that the Arduino reads. The analog pins on the Arduino measure this voltage change, which is then converted into a value between 0 and 1023, corresponding to the position of the joystick on that axis. So, joystick model has 5 pins. Ground pin, which connects to ground on the Arduino. 5 volts or VCC pin, which connects to the Arduino's 5 volts. VRX is the X-axis pin, which we can connect to one of the analog pins. Also, VRY is the Y-axis pin, which we can connect same as VRX to one of the analog pins. And finally, here is the CW pin, which is the button switch on the joystick. So this button here is controlled by that pin, but we won't use it for this tutorial. Now let's make a circuit to understand better the logic of the joystick. So here I'm connecting the ground to the ground pin on the Arduino. Also a 5 volts pin to the 5 volts pin on the Arduino. And finally, I connect one of the axis pin to one of the analog pins on the Arduino. Now the circuit is done. Let's make the code. So, in the voice setup function, I start the serial monitor. Then, in the loop function, I create a variable named joystick value, and I store there the signals sent by the joystick to A0 analog pin. Then I am writing to the serial monitor this value. Everything is okay. I'm uploading the code, and let's see what happens. So, as you see on the screen, when I move the X-axis of the joystick, the value on the serial monitor changes. Now let's try to control the servo with our joystick. Our joystick circuit is already done. Now I'm just adding the servo to the circuit. I connect the power pins of the servo to Arduino. And finally, I'm connecting the signal pin of the servo to any digital pin on Arduino. In this case, I'm connecting to the 7th pin. Now we are done with the circuit. Let's make the code. So, first, I include the servo library in my code. Then I create an object here to name my servo. If you don't know how to use servo with Arduino, you can look at my channel. Now in the voice setup function, I attach my servo to the 7th pin. And in the loop function, we already have the code for a joystick. But instead of digital, we can use here also analog. It doesn't matter. Then I create a variable called servo angle, where I map the joystick's raw value to a range that the servo can understand. Since the servo can only move between 0 and 89 degrees, I use the map function to convert the joystick value from 0 and 1023 to a degree between 0 and 89. So here is the value of the joystick, and here I write the output value that will go to the servo. And finally, I write the mapped value to the servo. And also I add a small delay of 100 milliseconds here to smooth out the movement. Now let's see, does it work or not? So here is an error because I have written this with mistake. Send the code. And now we can test it. So, when I move the joystick's x-axis, the servo works properly. You can also add another servo to the other pin of the joystick, the VRY pin. You can also use another servo.